What would you do if you had a maxed character and there was nothing of value to do in the game? If you said stay away from the game, I would applaud you for this answer. However, I kinda can't quite afford to stay offline for much longer. The utopian activity bothers me. I have practically exhausted most of my event related ideas, and the one that has been in production for over a month might have to wait a bit longer, simply because I'm really struggling to find the correct words to say in regards to it. Regardless, while this is happening, I decided to revisit a challenge from 2024 that I never let you guys know I was interested in. The challenge in particular is making the game harder by defeating the hardest boss in the game with the lowest level gear possible. Or well, close to lowest, but I'll get to that in a bit. To get you up to speed, low level gear has no gem slots, which means that I will be playing with no gems and no base values, which also means that any enchantments would be close to irrelevant. And once the build is done, I will try to defeat Mortis on the highest difficulty possible just to experience what has been long gone from the game, the actual difficulty. Here is the precise rule set. The objective is to defeat Mortis at all costs. Simple as that. But there are a couple side goals to this that I will try to follow. I will try to do this with only using green essences on the highest difficulty possible and without a single death. Using second chance for this challenge is fair game. With that lengthy intro out of the way, let's begin. The lowest level items that can be used on the workbench for equipment creation are level 10. There is only one level 10 monster in the entire game, with that being the final boss of the old tomb. And since I need one equipment from all 14 kinds, including a two-handed weapon in order to decide the build, this would take forever. And because I want to get to the challenging part before giving up on the idea altogether, I chose to farm Hagestov Girdle for the level 11 gremlins. Don't get me wrong, this still took quite a while. I spent roughly 2 hours in pursuit of all the level 11 gear, but considering each run was close to 2.5 minutes, it didn't feel like that many runs to really get exhausting. Generally, I find longer loops way less tiring than short 1-minute ones, thus my partial dislike for a certain recent event. But I'm getting off track here. Once I collected all the necessary glyphs from a couple blood chest runs, it was the time to brainstorm a build. There are a bunch of limitations when it comes to what build I can make. To get the obvious out of the way, I can't use gear that relies on drops such as Brigadier gear, Seeker gear, or Flame Conqueror gear. Additionally, I can't use the Ancestral Glory set here, and I clearly didn't farm an extra Dragon set for this. I even forgot to farm the latest edition for the pet, and didn't collect enough for the extra shoulders. But I can still get a couple useful sets to help me. In particular, there are exactly 2 sets that give any meaningful stats. The Poison Extinguisher sets 50% damage with 30% uptime, and the Spring set with permanent 4% damage and crit. Most of the other items were just chosen as favorites from the list, and don't have any real contribution. I was considering using the Sharkarab Quiver, but considering how important Precise Shot will be in phase 3 against multiple enemies, I decided to skip farming for the Quiver and just throw with a Placebo Shield. Additionally, at the time I crafted the Adamant Magma, I thought that the extra burn effect from Explosive Arrow would help, but in reality, Mortis is completely immune to that, so this cloak craft was as bad of a choice as any. After checking my stats and fight, I realized that I would not be able to get away with using a two-handed weapon, which kinda sucks since I wanted to use a 2-part winter set for the 10% increased damage and health. And it certainly doesn't help me that the one-hand alternatives are about as unhelpful as the weaker half of my gear. With the full build crafted, I present to you my level 11 items build. Looks atrocious, right? Well, you know the saying, if it works, it isn't stupid. And I will try my best to make it work. So, you're probably wondering, how am I planning to take a character with a stat page similar to a starting level 100 and defeat Mortis like this? Well, most of my answers are in a previous video that I will link as a card right now, but basically I will be using the taunt mechanic to keep Mortis attacking only my wolf by constantly refreshing my tree while he's in the middle of an attack. For this, I need to build as much health as possible to make sure Mortis cannot kill the wolf by doing more damage than it gets healing from my Jewel of Encouragement. And yes, for this self-impulse challenge, all runes and jewels are allowed. For my skill tree, I will obviously be using Precise Shot, as I expect the fight to be too long for me to manage a Death Sweep build, and I will be prioritizing any monsters to make sure my summons stay alive. I have had struggles with underestimating bosses in the past, so I decided to start by doing a test run on Merciless difficulty. The full run will be linked at the top of the description, as it is way too long and repetitive to share in a video focused on narrating my journey. I will use the beginning of the run to explain where this challenge originated from. While I traditionally get most of my ideas out of sheer boredom, there are some occasions where I get inspiration from other GSO tubers and people in the official Discord server for other ideas. This particular idea was initially done by Frosty sometime last year. I will link her channel in the description, but what you need to know is that the video of the Mortis kill is no longer there. The run was done with a Spellweaver on painful difficulty, and when I commented about regretting not coming up with this idea, the response I got is to, well, try on Bloodshed. I didn't take the challenge last year, as I wasn't yet familiar with the methods I will be using now to avoid having to take damage. However, what I can't avoid is the slow realization that this test run will take way longer than anything I would usually do in DSO. I started the run with as little as 20,000 green essences, and by the time phase 1 was defeated, I was already nearly 10 minutes in and 8,000 green essences down. Considering the small mob wave took another full minute and 500 more essences, I seem to be extremely unprepared for this run in terms of essences. In fact, the green essences completely ran out before I had even cut phase 2's health down to half. The essences resulted in about 1/8 of my total damage, so this will definitely have an impact on this long fight. Everything was going according to plan, with me occasionally missing the tree timing, but at this point none of this was fatal. Since I play on Merciless, phase 2 will not be able to one-shot me and trigger my second chance. However, something I wasn't prepared for was this. Since I was repeating mostly the same cycle for almost 25 minutes in phase 2 and only looked for timing the tree well, I had failed to realize my wolf was defeated. And this was not something I planned for. By the time I was able to recover, I made a critical mistake. I ran into the boss attack, and then the first proc of Second Chance. I didn't expect it to happen so soon. This one hit had inflicted some anxiety going forward into this run, but the point of this run was entirely to test the limits of low stats, which is what I did going into phase 3. Phase 3 had even more health and defensive values than phase 2. However, while the boss is only in the first of 3 stages, he is very similar to phase 2. The one difference is that now I have to watch for the boss casting those eruptions at me if I fail to place the tree on time, or similarly worse, deal with a dash and then spend time redirecting him to a certain spot. This was the point in time I debated switching from Mortis pet to the new Dragando that reduced 16% armor while also giving 16% attack speed, until I realized that I never farmed it on my ranger. Let's face it, surely it wasn't going to be an upgrade even in this scenario, right? Roughly 58 minutes into this boring attack sequence into 3 cycle with occasional movement, it is time to start dealing with additional monsters spawning in. The first bunch is the most dangerous, as I run the risk of some archers in the distance destroying my wolf while I'm unprepared. Here, I focused all of my attention on removing the initial spawns, but after that, I still had to deal with enemies spawning from the cave. For this, I was able to set up my tree so that melee enemies would walk in front of me and get caught into a ticket plus trap combo for maximum armor break to be able to get rid of them. I did make a mistake that cost me a second chance and almost my deathless goal, but I was able to recover shortly after. I was heading into the last stage of phase 3 with my second chance fully reloaded. However, shortly after the new spawn wave began, I was in for a surprise. I had accidentally gotten closer to Mortis than my tree was, which preemptively broke the taunt. This is really bad news, as now it will be near impossible to get my wolf to attack Mortis again. I would be able to get close to Mortis to summon it and run away, but those enraged cavalry appeared too powerful for me to try. So instead, I switched to just running and trying to slam the cavalry in particular. I got really lucky that this one didn't have any healers, because they would have certainly been able to revert all progress I did in the past 45 minutes. This is no longer a trial run. This is now the real deal. I will absolutely take the Mortis Merciless kill with level 11 items if I get through everything happening at this point in the run. After over 80 minutes of relatively little danger, this is the time I need to get everything under control. If I'm able to clear everything once, I will be able to dark myself in a corner and have the taunting strategy finish the job. However, at 1 hour and 25 minutes in, disaster struck. The deathless dream shattered. I had completely forgotten to pay attention to when Mortis is moving, and this cost me the run. After such a long attempt, I decided that this one would be it. I don't care about the deathless dream anymore. All I need is to get this run to see the light of day, just to prove that this seemingly easy strategy is far more difficult when it has to be executed for such a long time. I was able to clear all enemies in a few minutes, and then I went back to the corner away from the Skeleton Dragon's spawning range. I did fumble the 3D deployment a couple of times, costing me more points on both the second chance and death counters, but eventually, I finally got him. I have to say, given this video was easier for me to make than talking about the state of certain recent events, there's either a problem with me or with the game. Probably a bit of both. The conclusion of this video is that it is reasonably possible to defeat Mortis on Merciless difficulty with the lowest level gear and no gems. But can this be pushed to bloodshed? Honestly, I don't even want to try. The boss will have effectively almost double the health. His damage will be high enough to eventually kill my wolf because I can't build more health, and the sheer possibility of there being healers on bloodshed is already making this potentially 3-hour long run sound even more soul damaging than it could already be. So, this is where I ask you for direction. Should I claim the Merciless kill as a win for this challenge and move on? Or can I change the requirements in some way to preserve the endurance aspect while not making the run take forever to do? Please, let me know in the comments. I may come back to this after some variety videos if you provide me with good ideas for a way to make the impossible challenge just that little bit more possible. Once again, I want to thank Frosty for the video idea. You can check out her channel in the description of this video. She has made a variety of videos, including at least one that could compete with my Things You Don't Do series in terms of commitment for wasting progression. See you when I see you. Bye for now.